Senator DaPonte.
Thank you, Madam President. The item we have before us today, as was already mentioned, is an act making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2009. As all of you are very well aware, and as this leadership has mentioned on a number of occasions, publicly and privately, the world fundamentally changed, or has fundamentally changed, since we left this building last June. We have a global economy that has gone on an uncontrollable downward spiral. Just last year alone, there was $50 trillion in market capitalization that vanished. There were once stalwart, independent global financial institutions that either no longer exist or had to merge with other institutions just to barely survive. And I think the jury is still out on whether or not they will ultimately be, some of them will ultimately be able to survive. And the unfortunate, or one of the unfortunate realities of living in the global economy that we live in is that all of these terrible things have trickled down to the state of Rhode Island and to the state of Rhode Island's finances. The budget problem that we were faced with was largely caused by the economic downturn, which created a deficit that was estimated to exceed $370 million. Included in this estimate was a $233 million reduction in anticipated revenues from last November's revenue estimating conference. While this budget is one that many of us, if not all of us, do not like, taking a rather conservative approach, I believe that it is positioning the state for further financial and economic deterioration in the months to come. I'd like to just provide a summary of some of the budget items. There is a net increase of approximately $331 million from the FY 2009 enacted budget, and the total budget amounts to approximately $7.3 billion in all funds. The increased spending resulted from an infusion of nearly $300 million in federal stimulus funding, and a large part of that, approximately $140 million, was driven from an enhanced Medicaid match. General revenues, however, are approximately $244 million less than the FY09 enacted budget that we passed last year. In this FY09 supplemental, we have an estimated ending balance of approximately $600,000. The one thing this budget does not do, and it's a point that we felt extremely strong about going back weeks and even months, was that it does not tap the rainy day fund. I said earlier today that the rainy day fund is what we need, or what we may possibly need, once we get our May revenue estimating conference numbers. And the way things are going, we don't need a rainy day fund, we need a typhoon fund. Much to the dismay of many of us, this budget does incorporate some restorations, changes that were made to the budget last night on the House floor. They include a $25 million restoration for general revenue sharing, a $1.1 million restoration for the developmentally disabled, and that also includes, or in addition to, $1.7 million in available federal matching funds. It includes $1.2 million not to postpone the COLA for nursing homes, which will also result in an additional $1.8 million in available federal Medicaid matches. Now, these restorations were funded by $20 million in federal stimulus money that was previously slated for FY 2010 and FY 2011. There is $3.7 million in anticipated achieved statewide savings in personnel and operating expense reductions. And an additional $3.4 million comes from an anticipated $4 million free surplus